This is the Two Bald Guys Sports Podcast. Bald heads, bold takes. Now, here are your hosts, Adam and Tony.
Welcome back. I'm Adam.
I'm Tony.
Tony, hey man, we're getting off season. I think I listened to the local sports news, and they counted it up. They're 92 days away from the Hall of Fame game. So we're under 100 days. We're under 100 days for football. I know it's not. I mean, it's still real football. I know there's some real football happening with the UFL or whatever it's called nowadays. But we got some real football in less than 100 days, and then the college football obviously comes up a little bit after that. So, before we get into what we're going to talk about with college football, because we're under 100 days, do you pay attention to the Hall of Fame game?
Yes, I will pay attention to it, but like you said, it's real football, but it's not like I don't know. I'm just not invested in that game as I would be once the season starts, whether it's college or NFL. Now I'm invested in games, multiple games. Will I watch it? Yes. Will I follow? Yeah, absolutely. I'll be in on it, but it's not quite the same, but it does give us that little tease, that little, here's a little bit of decent football for you to watch before the real season starts.
Right. I think, honestly, it's the type of game that you pay attention to because it's the real football for the first time in however long, obviously, since, if you're paying attention to UFL, cool. I watched a little bit of it. It's not horrible football, but it's not that, really get into game. We obviously have our opinions about that. So, but yeah. Under 100 days for football. I know college football starts up right at the end of August, beginning of September there. But let's get into some college football because they talked about this a little bit. They came out with an article. I think I forget what the initials are. The thing.
AFCA.
I think it's the AFCA, American Football something. I don't know
Coaches
what it even stands
Association.
for. All right. They're talking about things that they should do to change the schedule. Some of the things they're talking about just going to one bye game. Some of them are talking about trying to finish up the season earlier. And I know part of it was to talk about making that week 0 because apparently, and I didn't know this, I don't know how I've paid attention to football forever, but you had to petition or ask to play on that week 0. I didn't know that because I just thought it's just, people just, we picked teams and we played some games that week to, kind of get us a little bit of an appetizer to the regular season started. But I know they talked about like having everybody play a little bit earlier. So, and then one of them is, some talked about getting rid of the conference championship games or adjusting those a little bit. But one of the things too is keeping the Army-Navy game. So before we get into the really juicy part of what's going on, do you like the Army-Navy game getting their own Saturday?
Yes, and I think the proposal just gives them because right now Army-Navy that's the only game on Saturday. I think the new Army-Navy game is traditional, classic, historic, important. It's a game that needs to have its own. I'm not going to necessarily say day, but I think the new proposal says its own time slot. So there's no other games during that Army-Navy game, which is how it should be. But there could be some postseason games like nighttime or something like that. So there could be other games that day because right now it has its own Saturday. And I think with this playoff stuff, there's going to have to be a little bit of flexibility there. Army-Navy, own time slot, but there could be other games later that day. And I think that's just that Army-Navy game just kind of get you set for the whole day because otherwise you're just Army-Navy game and then you're done and you're like, oh man, that was great, but I feel like I'm missing something. So it's like give them their own slot so there's nobody else to distract. Focus on the Army-Navy game, and then when that's over, boom, you can move right into postseason games.
Right. So I love the pageantry, the importance of the Army-Navy game. It's awesome. Like it's always one you kind of tune into, even if you haven't really paid attention to those two schools. There's the hatred on the field a little bit because they want to beat each other, but there's that complete mutual respect because of those people that obviously are going to go fight for our freedom, and for the U.S. I think it has been on the same day within the Heisman ceremony. So there's a couple of things that have been brought up. And like I said, I was listening to our local sports radio is one, What about the off chance that Army Navy is now eligible? Because I forget which one's been good, but one of them's been up at the top of their conference. And what happens if they were in position to make the playoffs? And two, when do you host a Heisman then? Because the Heisman, I think, has been normally that night. And if you're playing playoffs, and somebody brought it up, probably the people playing in the playoffs are part of the Heisman part of it. So they're not going to go to New York for a Heisman thing when they're playing the playoffs. So I think there's some logistics that need to be a little bit on that, because let's be honest, if Navy or Army is making the playoff, they're probably not getting the bye. So they would be playing in that first round. So wins that first round, because you can't sit there and be like, well, Army Navy is going to play on that Saturday, and they make the playoff and be like, well, we'll give you a little bit of break, but you're going to play on Wednesday or something like that, right? You got to give them a full week, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, at least 6 days, like minimum. But you're right.
Right.
We got a Heisman ceremony that can be moved. I don't think that's a biggest factor, but you're right. Navy, I think, has been pretty darn good recently, winning 9-10 football games. But you're right. If they make the postseason, how does that work for the Army-Navy game? Because, I honestly, I didn't even think about that, because Army and Navy typically aren't in the conversation. Right. But if we're talking about expanding the playoff to even more teams, now we could have a 10-1 Army or Navy team, because I think Army was pretty good several years ago when Oklahoma had to play them and struggled with them. They could win 9 or 10 games, and they could get into a 16 or, if we get crazy, go 24 team playoff. So I don't want to lose the Army-Navy game, but you also have to focus on the postseason. So I don't know if they're going to move the postseason. They're trying to get that postseason started a little earlier, not have so many weeks off from your conference championship to the first playoff game. And I get that. But the Army-Navy game, it's kind of like the Michigan-Ohio State game in a sense, where you need to play it every year, regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So they figure that out. Play that a week before the postseason, or if Army-Navy, I don't know, but they got to be flexible with it, because that game has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too, I think they talk about the playoffs is, and I get it's all, let's be honest, the scheduling is completely based off of TV, right?
Oh,
it's not necessarily what's in the best interest of the players. I mean, they're not killing them. They're not playing 2 days later, all that stuff. I get that, but they gotta work around the NFL schedule and stuff like that. But I don't understand why you can't figure it out where basically you're playing once a week and basically at 7 days, maybe 8 days. But I mean, I think this next year the final is going to be like January 24th or something like that, right in there, 23rd, 24th, whatever. It's right in there. I mean, that's getting pretty late for college football to get done. And I mean, you can get this done better than this, and I just don't understand it. Now, the one thing is just doing one bye week, and I understand. Don't get me wrong, 2 bye weeks is great, but they've done one bye week a lot throughout. The NFL does one bye week. We can debate about that. That's talk for another time. But I do know on that topic, the SEC. I think it was the SEC is like, oh, we really need to get this two byes, because now that we're going to nine conference games, we need to have these 2 byes. Well, guess who's been doing 9 conference games for a while?
Everybody else.
Pretty much. The Big 10, the Big 12. Get out of here with this nonsense about, oh my God, we're playing 9 games. And please stop with this. Well, our schedule is such a gauntlet, because we've gone down this road a bunch, and I guarantee
it's different.
we will argue about this again. You can't. I don't want to get into it, but
that's a whole show.
Yeah, that's a whole show. But you get into that. So I think the one bye is good. You just got to make sure you have it placed properly. I mean, you to me, some of these teams get byes like 2 weeks into the season. Now, when you have 2 byes, that's not that big of a deal. But let's be honest, you don't need a bye 2 weeks into the season, right? You should have the bye somewhere in the middle of your conference schedule, somewhere. I mean, they got to be able to do that, because that's when you can control that schedule better as a conference. The conference teams can't really control their non-conference games. I mean, the conference can't control the members with their non-conference games, right? So figure out that bye. Like when you do, like for example, because I like the Big Ten, when you do the Big Ten schedule, just make sure you schedule a team's bye in there, within that schedule. It shouldn't be that hard. I mean, you have to be able to make that work, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think an ideal bye week would be somewhere after week 4 and probably before week 8. I mean,
Yeah,
that's ideal. You're going to play 5 games, maybe 6 games. You don't want to play 8 games and then have a bye necessarily, especially if you got guys that are banged up. Those last few games are going to be rough. But like you said, you don't want bye week 3. You just
right.
played nobody, and your starters didn't even play for, the third and fourth quarter, maybe the first 2 weeks, and then you have a bye all of a sudden. Now you're playing 8, 9 games in a row. So somewhere between that 5th week and 8th week, somewhere in there, you can squeeze that bye week in there because, we've talked about this before. The Bamas of the world and LSU's, they conveniently put buys right before big games. Right, nobody's taking a bye before McNeese State. Alabama's playing McNeese State before LSU or before Auburn or something like that. So they can figure out the bye weeks, I think, a little bit easier than maybe the postseason, because you also got to think NFL postseason is running. I mean, you're talking late January. NFL postseason's right there. So,
yeah, right.
College ends, and then the NFL takes over your Saturday and Sunday for the last few weeks.
Right.
So, like you said, it's all about TV. It's about money. So they have to figure it out. But they're trying to maybe start the season earlier, which I'm all for. Because college football earlier, even better. So
yeah, absolutely.
Just a couple weeks here and there would make a big difference.
So I know I didn't want to get into it, but I got to say one more thing about the SEC. I think it's hilarious that they're complaining about having another bye or not having that 2 bye when basically half their conference is having a bye week, the second to last week of the year. I mean, we've joked about this. I mean, half the conference is playing Furman and East Tennessee State and all these schools. Like, so don't give me this. And you're protecting your teams. You've been doing it forever. Like, the Big Ten, for the most part, is not doing that. I'm sure they do it a little bit. Like, let's be honest, they're not going to try and schedule Michigan to play like Penn State and Ohio State back-to-back weeks. So you do protect them a little bit. But I guarantee if we go right now to the Bama schedule, and you know what? I'm going to pull this up. We go to the Bama schedule. All right, here we go. So I have to. I mean, I'm sorry. I need to do this right now. So if we go to the Alabama schedule,
Bama is historically bad about doing this.
And they are probably playing. They probably have 2 byes. Okay, so 15, 17, 19, 20, 30. Actually, they might only have 1 bye week. 17. All right. Alabama has 1 bye week. Okay. All right. They have 1 bye week. I'm pretty sure if I'm looking at this correct. Yeah, they have 1 bye week, which is fine. They have 1 bye week. I'll give you 17 guesses on who it's in front of, and the first 16 don't count. So who's Alabama's bye in front of?
I mean, Georgia's my first thought.
Well, it's not. It's actually not Georgia, but think about who they traditionally play. LSU. It is before LSU. It is 100% before LSU. And before they play Bama, do you think they're playing a major conference team?
No, absolutely not. Before they play Auburn, it'll be might not even be a freaking, maybe a Division II team.
It is a team from the state of Tennessee.
Was it Middle Tennessee State or something?
Close. Chattanooga.
Chattanooga. Yeah, that's a classic.
Which, if it was Middle Tennessee State, at least it'd be an FCS school. It's an FCS school. That's true. So their bye game is in front of LSU, and they have UTC Chattanooga before Auburn. Now, they do play at Mississippi State before they play Georgia. So they are playing Georgia this year. LSU, guess when their bye game is? Right before Bama. Yeah. Now, I will give them credit. LSU is playing Tennessee and Arkansas back-to-back weeks to end the season.
But Arkansas isn't your typical, I know they can be okay, but they're not going to probably be that great. But yeah, okay. Yeah, SEC is notorious. Auburn, if you looked at Auburn probably before Bama, probably has some.
Yeah, Auburn before Bama has a bye. So Georgia, their bye week is after Auburn, but before Florida. So they are playing Alabama, Auburn back-to-back. So I will give them a little credit. Okay, I will give Georgia a little bit of credit, and because this year they play Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Alabama, Auburn 4 consecutive weeks.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and then they do have South Carolina before they play Georgia Tech to end the year. So you know what? I will give Georgia a pass for this one. And Georgia Tech technically is a non-conference game, but they have Tennessee State and Western Kentucky. But you can't really complain about those. Those are the first 2 games of the year. So, I'll give Georgia a pass on that one. But
I have no problem with those early games. If you want early games to be cupcakes because you're trying to figure things out, get your guys ready, that's fine. But Georgia, I think they're going to be number one if they're not already preseason number one. I think they are. Or they're going to be or whatever. But their schedule's a little bit tougher than Bama because when Saban was there, and I'm not blaming Saban for this, but the SEC kind of protected Bama all those years. And don't get me wrong, Bama was good and they won national titles, and we're not taking that away from them. But they do get a little bit of help before the big games, and LSU does, and then of course Auburn. So the SEC is notorious for that. They're not. I don't think if you looked at the Big Ten, it would be the same. Like, is Indiana all of a sudden because they went undefeated? They don't have to. They have a bye before they play Ohio State or anybody now. I doubt it.
Yeah, let me look. I'll find Indiana real quick. But
yeah, I'm just curious.
Now Indiana's non-conference schedule is pretty weak. I will say that.
But that's scheduled 5 years ago, probably.
Well, they've moved a little bit because Cignetti said I'm going to go the SEC way of scheduling, which is kind of true.
Yeah.
So, okay. Here's Indiana's schedule for. They have a bye before they play USC, but after Minnesota. But they play at home against Ohio State. Well, they play at Nebraska, at home against Ohio State, and at Michigan in back-to-back weeks. So they play Ohio State, Michigan back-to-back weeks. Okay, right
go to
there.
Nebraska. So going to Nebraska, say what you want about Nebraska, but going to Nebraska can be.
Well, listen, I don't know how good Michigan's going to be. We've talked about this. I understand, but Ohio State's going to be really good. You get scheduled like they won the national championship last year, and they're going to go to Ohio State and Michigan back-to-back weeks.
Back-to-back. There you go. Yeah, could you see Bama going to Georgia and Auburn or LSU back-to-back weeks? Absolutely
not. No, absolutely not. You can't do that. All right. So another thing with this is, and we've talked about this a little bit too, is the conference championship games. Okay, should they play it? Should it be 1 versus 2? Should it be 3 versus 4? It's trying to be a playing game so the 1 versus 2 doesn't get hurt. Listen, I went to when Michigan made the first Big Ten championship game. Against Iowa. I went to it, and I get it. It was back when there was a 14 playoff, so it didn't matter as much. But it was fun. It was a blast. Like, I had an absolute blast. It's one of the most fun I've had going to a Michigan game. I mean, obviously, going to the Big House is a little bit more fun, but it was a blast. Like, shouldn't the winning your conference, and I get the ultimate goal is to win in the national championship. I completely recognize that fact. But shouldn't winning your conference matter at least a little bit that you keep these games, right? What do you think?
I'm going to go just back to the 2025 season. Look at Duke. What they did. Yeah, their record wasn't that great. They didn't even make the playoff. But you don't think those kids who won an ACC conference championship aren't excited about that? Like that. If Duke had not done that, I might be able to sway a no conference championship games type of argument. But you have a team with Duke who all they did was beat the teams in their conference enough to get into the conference championship, and then they upset Virginia. So, and I know they didn't make the playoff, but to those kids, that was their playoff game. That was it. That was their best that they're going to get, and they're ACC champions, and you can't take that away from them. So it's hard for me to say, boy, that's just eliminate conference championship games. But then on the other hand, like, are those conference championship games necessary when we have, if we expand the playoff to 16 or 24, whatever they're going to do, those conference championship games become less and less important. I mean, like you mentioned, like teams are not going to be that excited. Like the number 1, number 2 teams that are already making the playoff, what do they have to gain by going there to the conference championship game? So Duke might be a little bit of an exception to the rule, but still, Duke is an ACC champs, and you can't take that away, even though they didn't make the playoff. So it's hard to argue that those kids didn't earn that.
Yeah. So here's where I'm at with it a little bit, right? The chances of you actually winning the national championship are if you're making the playoff, obviously it's 1 of 12. It's 1 of, if it expands to 16, you're 1 of 16. And if it expands to 16, we've talked about this a little bit, you're still probably only like maybe 5 or 6 of them that really have a realistic shot of winning, right? To make the other thing. I'm not saying they don't have a shot. I'm not saying the Boise's or or the teams that are like even like Oklahoma last year. I don't think you went in a playoff thinking Oklahoma really was going to win the whole thing, right? You're hoping they would beat Bama, and then you run in Indiana and all that. You make the conference championship game, you have literally one game. That's it. You're playing one game to win a championship. I know it's just a conference championship. I get it, right? But shouldn't that mean something to the kids? Like, should it mean like, should we have value to that? Like, I still think like I would still think that's pretty cool that they're, Michigan, of the 3 years that they won the Big Ten championship, they won the Big Ten 1 year. I'm sorry, the national championship 1 year. Now we can, argue if they beat TCU, could they beat Georgia? But they didn't. They won the national championship 1 year. And I'm very, very happy they did it as a fan. But I still celebrate those 3 Big Ten championships. They won back-to-back Big Ten championship games. And, that's something you can go back on and be like, you know what? We're still conference champions, and a conference that's pretty darn good. I mean, the SEC's got to be thinking the same thing too, right? I mean, you want to talk about how good your conference is, right? So shouldn't there be a little bit of pride in going and playing and winning that championship game? Now, I know it's an extra game, and I understand the whole thing about is it worth it? Like, is the gain for winning the game enough to outweigh the loss from losing the game, right? Where can we do to get that? And I have an idea, but I just want to hear your thoughts. Like, is it worth it enough? Like, just think about this. Like, is the gain enough in the championship game as opposed to the loss?
I guess that would depend. That's the problem. I think each scenario is a little bit different. Because you could go and win your conference championship game and not make the playoff like we saw with Duke. So, yeah, in that situation, I'm like, yes, the gain is worth it. But then on the other hand, if you're undefeated, like Indiana was, and they lose to Ohio State in the conference championship, yeah, they're not Big Ten champs, but they still get a chance to make a run and win the national championship. I mean, we saw it with Ohio State a couple of years ago. They didn't even play in the Big Ten championship game. Weren't even Big Ten champs, but when it came playoff time, that team played amazing and ran through the playoff. So, yeah, I think it just depends. But I'm kind of like you. I want to, especially now that Oklahoma's in the SEC, I want Oklahoma to be SEC champs. I think that would be so cool. I mean, they have a ton of Big 12, ton of Big 8 conference championships, but an SEC championship from Oklahoma, I think that would be kind of cool. And I like the conference championship games. It really shows you number 1, number 2 in the conference, and let's play it out on a neutral field and see who wins. So I like the conference championship games, but the playoff is making it people are now divided on this thing, which they got to figure that out so people don't lose sight of the importance of the conference championship. Because I think you're right. Winning the Big Ten, winning the SEC, that's important to these kids. It should be.
Yeah, it should be, right, because it's still like – I go back, and I know this isn't football, but when I was in high school, I won a sectional, which would be like the districts or wherever, depends on what state. I was in Indiana, and then I won a regional, and we came up short. We lost in the Final Four. So we didn't have a state championship, but I still look back on that fondly, and I have a sectional championship and a regional championship. Yep. Some other states I've been in, it's been a district and then a regional, whatever it might be, right? Yep. Like, I still have that. Like, and I understand I'm not getting paid. I understand it's not in college. I get all that. But like if you're not just doing it for the money, right? And now that college kids are getting paid, I get it. Some of them are just doing it for the money. How can I get mine, and how can I be better so I can get mine in the NFL? I understand that. But like, if you have some competitive juices in you at all, shouldn't you want to go play in these conference championship games? Now, in college basketball, I know they don't play everybody twice because there's so many schools, but they play each other once. Everybody plays each other, right? So if you win the regular season championship, you can be like, you know what, we really did it. But also playing, like in the Big Ten, you play 18 games in the conference. And I know you can play more games in basketball. I get that. So like if you win the conference championship in the regular season, you can be like, hey, listen, we did something, right? We played everybody. We showed everybody we're the best team. In football right now, especially too, you're not playing half the teams. Like I know Michigan's playing Ohio State, but like Indiana did not play Ohio State in the regular season last year, right? So isn't there something to be said about, hey, listen, yeah, cool, we were like at the top of the Big Ten in the regular season, but we didn't play everybody because you're only playing 9 games and there's 155 teams in each conference now.
Right.
So like, to go and show that we're the best team in this conference right now. And we can argue about the ACC's, tie-break situation and why Duke got to that game. But at the same time, it was a tie-break, and they got in, and they did what they needed to do to get in, and they went and won it. So, like, if you have some competitive, I guess what I'm basically, my whole point is, if you have some competitive juices in you, I want to go play in that conference championship game and win a conference championship, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. 100%. I'm with you. We won districts my junior year, and we went on to state, and we got fourth at state. But, yeah, it sucks we didn't win state, but, man, we got that district championship. We got that trophy. We got that T-shirt. We got that stuff that shows that we were district champs. And I think that Duke is a great example of they knew they probably weren't going to make the playoff. They knew they weren't going to win a national title. But, man, they showed up in that ACC championship game, and they won. Because if Virginia wins that game, they're in the national championship. So right. I think Virginia had a ton to lose, and they did lose that. But Duke showed up, and they won, and they can at least be like, you know what? When I played football at Duke, we won an ACC championship. And that might be the only Duke team that does it for who knows how long. So, I'm with you. I think conference championships are important, but you're right. Because of the number of teams in all these conferences, the Big Ten is now 16 teams in it or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
It's hard to play everybody. So how do you determine who the best team is in that? Basketball, baseball, softball, they all have their little mini brackets that they can play out, but it's different. You can't play that many games in football. So I think keep them, figure out a way to keep them, but also you need to figure out a way to not. And they've done a pretty good job of not punishing teams for losing those. To make an argument for BYU maybe. But for the most part, they have, if you make the conference championship game, you don't get punished. If you were in the playoff before the conference championship game, then you'll still be in after type of situation, depending.
So that's a great lead into my thing. And again, if the NCAA wants to call me, my number, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But they can call me. Tony and I will give you some ideas. Yeah. Here's my idea for this in a way to keep the conference championship games and make it 1 versus 2.
Okay.
This is never going to happen. I just want to preface this. It's never going to happen. I shouldn't say it's never going to happen, but I can't see it happening. I think you come out before conference championship games, before the conference. So when the regular season ends to the conference game, you come out as a committee and you say, these are the teams in, period.
Yeah.
But you say, let's say there's a Duke in there, okay? All right. Or a team that's borderline and they're playing the conference championship. And I can't remember if there's going to be a conference championship tie-in or not. All right. And you say, listen, BYU, you are in right now, win or lose, unless Duke wins. Right?
Right.
And then you could say, if you can win or lose, and you're not giving out seeds. You're just basically saying, here's your top 12 teams right now, right?
Top 12, yep.
Here's your top 12 teams. All right, BYU, you're in. I don't care if you win or lose, you're in, because that way you don't punish none of them for going to the conference championship game.
Right.
But they also understand if they lose that game and there's an upset, like a bid stealer, kind of like in college basketball. It happens all the time, right?
Yep.
You have that team, let's say,
on the bubble, teams that are on the
bubble. And the Big Ten, the SEC, or whatever. NC State did it a few years ago in the ACC. They were 10th in the conference, and they won the conference championship. Right. So it stole a bid, right? I think if you go in with that and you just say, listen, if Duke wins, that BYU, you're the last team out if you lose, right?
Right.
But if you win, you're good. If you win, you're in because you win your conference championship game. But and then you go in knowing, listen, hey, we're one of the last teams in. We need to go take care of business, and if we don't, then we need to hope that Duke doesn't win or a Northwestern or whatever doesn't win, right? If you can do that, and you could do this, you really could do this, and you might have some pissed off teams on the bubble, but you know what? Make the conference championship game, right? I mean, exactly. You get to that point, right? Because the decisions that were made last year were just it was a little mind-boggling. I think BYU got screwed, but at the same and Notre Dame maybe, but Miami beat you.
Correct.
Notre Dame, you could have been like, hey, Notre Dame, you're in if Virginia wins. But they didn't. Duke won. And then, you can figure out why you took Miami over why you jumped them. Especially when it goes to 16 teams, right? There should be a little less on that on that thing where you're like, oh man, we should have been in. Because if you can't get in the top 16 teams in football, do you really deserve to be in?
Oh, yeah, exactly. 16 seems like a lot. So if you can't crack that top 16, then you probably have 3 or 4 losses and you should be in there.
Right. You shouldn't really argue. Like, I know, like in basketball this year, Auburn's like, oh, we had the best schedule. Dude, you were 500. You were 500 in basketball.
Correct.
There's 64 teams that get in. And I understand there's like 24 automatic qualifiers. I get that. But like, stop it. Please stop. You went 500, win some more games. I know you beat Florida, and supposedly Florida was the best team coming in. Like, get out of here. Like, you didn't deserve to be in. You can go cry me a river. You won the NIT, but you know what? You wouldn't have come close to winning anything else. You lost by 40 to Michigan. Like, get out of here. Like, stop it. But, yeah, I got a little fired up on that. But, like, you're telling me, like, the week before conference championship games, you can't say that? You can't be like, hey, listen, this is where we're at.
Yep.
They won't ever do that because they don't want to actually reveal what they're thinking, because God knows what they're thinking. We've had our questions about it. But if you did that, I think that then has teams go in there and be like, you know what, we want to go play on our conference championship game because we know we're in, right? Because you sit there and you're like, the only way you're out is if some team wins their game and is a thief. And let's be honest, how many teams are there really going to be like that?
Right. And it creates transparency, because last season you had a BYU play Texas Tech. They've already played throughout the year, and Texas Tech, I think, was the only team that had beaten BYU. And then you had Bama got blown out by Georgia in the SEC conference tournament, but somehow they jumped up enough spots to get in over BYU. I think that was probably, I know people were arguing for Notre Dame, but Notre Dame and Miami both, we have to realize if Virginia wins, like, they're both out. So Virginia losing caused the Miami-Notre Dame debate. Miami went in because they beat them earlier in the year. BYU should have been in over Bama, and I would have much rather probably played BYU as an Oklahoma fan than Bama again. So I think if you do what you say and say, here's how it looks right here before conference weekend. These are the 12 teams. Here's who's in almost no matter what, even if they lose. Right? There could be 3 or 4 teams that even if you lose your conference tournament, you're in. And then there's going to be a couple teams that are like, if you lose, you need some help. And here's the teams that need help to get in, right? Like BYU and Bama, Notre Dame, Miami could have been all sitting there on the bubble, and you could play out. If BYU loses and Virginia loses, now we're going to put in Miami and we're going to put in Bama. That way there's no argument. Like, there's nobody throwing temper tantrums. Notre Dame's not going to be like, oh, we're not playing in our Pop-Tart Bowl. I mean, you knew going in that this was the possible scenario. It creates transparency, and I like it because basketball does it like you said. They have these bubble teams, and these bubble teams need to either win or get some help from other teams losing. You could do it with probably the bottom 4 or 5 teams, depending on how many teams we have in the playoff coming up.
Right. I mean, and you could just be like, listen, this is what you need to do. You need to win the conference championship game. You're on the bubble. You need to do it.
Right.
But you have to preface it with that. You can't just sit there and like last year, BYU's in the top 12, right? I know Notre Dame was too, but that's a little bit different because Notre Dame didn't have a conference championship. BYU's in the top 12. So in theory, if they don't go play that conference championship game, they're thinking they're in, right? You should be, right? But if you sit there and you're like, here's our top group, these are in for sure. Right? BYU, we think you might be one of the top 12 teams, but you need to go win the conference championship game. And if you do that, then they're not being punished for going and playing in that game. They need to play that game to get in, and it's almost like a playing game for them, right? Like you said, you have that transparency instead of being like, you know what, BYU, you're 10th. Oh, wait, you lost. You're going to get jumped by or Bama's not going to move because they lost. I mean, honestly, if we went into last year, I think Bama should have been one of those, like, you need to win this game. If you don't win this game, you're not in. Period.
Yeah,
right.
They weren't even.
I mean, I understand. I trust me. I understand. They went and beat Oklahoma. I get that. And you know what? They showed they did it, but they didn't really show it in the second round. But they showed, okay, maybe they should have been in, maybe not. I don't know. But at the end of the day, in the regular season, especially in that one, Oklahoma beat Alabama. So if Alabama doesn't make the conference into the playoff, you can't be like, oh, we should have been in. Well, no, you lost to Bama. I mean, Oklahoma.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, it creates transparency. You know what you're going in ahead of time. Last year I think Duke already knew, but Duke, even if you win, you're still not getting in because you have 5 losses or something like that. But And I think Duke knew that anyway going in. They just went up there. And Virginia, I mean, they literally could have told Virginia, win and you're in, lose and you're out. Like, if you lose to a 5-loss Duke team, you're out. We're going to put Miami in. And everybody knows ahead of time. Everybody knows this. So going into conference championship weekend, you know exactly what's going to possibly play out. You just don't know who could get in based on what. But like you said, if you told BYU, listen, if you lose that game, you're out for sure. You're going to be out. BYU might have went in thinking, you know what, we're going to be in no matter what because they don't punish teams for losing their conference championship, which, okay, they kind of did that time. So
right, because the year before SMU went to the ACC championship game, lost. Now granted they were undefeated going to it, I think, but they lost. But they made it. They kept them in. So
they kept them, yeah.
BYU had an argument last year, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, you have that conversation from the very beginning. Listen, I know it's not going to happen, but it could happen. Like, this isn't unreasonable to have these things. You can't tell me that in the last couple weeks, you don't have an idea what might happen. And then, obviously in that last week, a lot of stuff can happen in that last week because, Bama's playing Auburn, Michigan's playing Ohio State, all that stuff. You have to be able to look at that and be like, here's our scenarios. Because, listen, it's like being a coach, right? Things happen in the game. You already thinking 5 steps ahead of it. And those committee members, and I would be too. If I'm sitting in that committee room right now, if they asked us to do it, and I'm going that last week of the season, let's say I have Michigan ranked here and Ohio State ranked here or whatever, and I'm sitting here like, well, if Michigan wins this game, they're going to jump into the top 4. If they don't lose this game, they might be in trouble or whatever it might be. Right. Like, you are thinking that stuff, and if you're not thinking that stuff, then you really shouldn't be on the committee because you have to think of that stuff beforehand a little bit, right? So tell me this, like, it almost seems too smart to actually happen, right?
Well, I mean, you could think that there's a little bit of manipulation going on, to get teams in like Bama over BYU because Bama would draw a bigger audience. And if they were transparent with all this stuff, then they can't really do that if you want to think that way. But you're right. All these guys on the committees, on the boards, whatever you want to call it, they have an idea of what's going to happen if this team wins, what's going to happen if that team loses. Like, they already knew going into that meeting kind of what was going to play out. They just kind of got put in a situation with Duke winning and then BYU and Bama both losing. Now somebody's got to get left out, and we got to put Miami and Notre Dame in, and how do we get Bama in there? So if you say all that ahead of time, then people will be less likely to think that there's favoritism, especially SEC favoritism.
And I think it really keeps that conference championship alive. Right.
And the importance of it too.
Right. And you can even be like, hey, listen, you win, and you can even say, like, when Georgia was playing Bama, Georgia, you win this. You can lay out a whole lot of scenarios. Be like, if Georgia wins this game, they're going to be in the top 4. They're getting a bye. Indiana, Ohio State, the winner of that game, you're going to be in the top 4. You get a bye. Like, I know there's not infinite scenarios, but there's a lot of scenarios that can play out, right? I get it. I'm a math teacher. I can figure this. Well, I don't want to right now, but I can figure this out.
The numbers, yeah.
Right. But there's enough that are basically obvious. Like, we knew last year when Indiana played Ohio State, whoever won that game was probably going to be the number 1 seed and get a bye. We knew if Georgia won the SEC championship, they were going to get a bye. Yep. We were pretty sure Texas Tech won the Big 12, they were going to get a bye. I think you get to a point where the bye teams are going to be down to, like, obviously 4, but like less than 8. There's going to be less than 8 teams that are up for a bye. So you can be like, here's your scenario. Oh, yeah. You win, you're probably in the bye. Like, you can do this, and the thing is it keeps the conference championships alive, because right now I know the SEC, even the Big Ten, have floated around. The 1 and 2s don't even play, and it's 3 and 4, and that 3 and 4 team is playing, and it's basically a playing game to get in, right. Or whatever it might be. But which I think is terrible, because people will watch because it'll be a playing game, but you're going to tell me there's some excitement behind a 3-4 playing instead of a 1-2 for an actual conference championship game. And then you get to the point is like, well, who is the actual conference champion? Like, does it just completely go away? because, like I said last year, Indiana was undefeated. Ohio State was undefeated, right?
Yeah.
They didn't play in the regular season, obviously.
So now you have
who's the champion?
Well, yeah, but the conference championship settled that. Indiana,
right? Exactly.
Beat them, but you're the champ.
Right, but if you don't have that, it's like, who's the champion? I mean, I think we all would like. We love the fact, like, I don't think anybody's going to go back to wanting to go back in the 80s of college football when you could tie and we didn't have those tiebreakers. Now, we can debate on the overtime rules now that, the whole 2-point conversion stuff. I think it's crap, but I get it. But, like, at least we have winners now, right? So you get these winners. I don't think anybody wants to go back to the fact when they had ties or, you didn't have conference championship games. So it's like, I think one year, I know for a fact that the Big Ten championship had ended in ties before, and they did a coin flip to see who went to Pasadena to play in the Rose Bowl.
That's
right?
Crazy.
Like, you want to go back to that type of situation. I understand it's not going to happen because there's not like the bowls you go to, but like, would you not like? I'll just even go back to 1997, the last time before they had the BCS. This is the last year before the BCS. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that? I mean, a Michigan fan, I would like to do it because I think we would have beat them, but you're telling me you want to see Michigan, Nebraska play and tell me who the actual national championship it is instead of them arguing right now because people felt bad for Nebraska and gave them part of the championship? Like,
right.
You want to go back to those days? Like, who wants to go back to those days?
I mean, even BCS didn't fix it because in 2003, I believe USC and LSU split. I believe they did in 2003, so the BCS didn't even fix it. So you're talking about now there should be no reason and there should be no argument about who the best team in the conference is. And there's 4 conferences that we're talking about here, really. ACC, right. Big 12, SEC, and Big 10. That's the 4 that we're talking about. I understand there's a ton of conferences out there, but in all reality, the top 4 conferences are those 4, and that's where you're going to have to settle who the best team is because more than likely, your national champion is going to come from one of those 4 conferences. Notre Dame would be the only possible exception to that.
Right, and they're not in a conference because the other the non-power 4 now. Whatever. I know the Big 12's coming back. I mean, not the Big 12, the Pac-12 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
All those teams want to play in that, right? Because that's their ticket in. Like, they need to win that game. Like, and they're in no illusion. They understand. Tulane versus Memphis or whoever it was, Western. I can't remember who it was they were playing. North Texas, I think it was last year. But anyways, they knew. Win this game, we're in. We lose this game, we're out. And you know what? That's this. And while you can argue, should we have more group of 5, whatever, it's the same way in college basketball. You win that. It doesn't matter for the most part. You could go almost undefeated. You need to win that conference championship game. So I don't think we're worried about those conference championship games going away. But you're right. And then let's be honest, it's mostly just the Big 10, Big 12, and SEC, and mostly Big 12, Big 10, and SEC. We understand this, but like. I don't want to. Now, it couldn't happen. I understand this. I'll preface this by Michigan plays Ohio State every week, every year. I get this. I wouldn't want Michigan to finish undefeated in the Big Ten, Ohio State to finish undefeated Big Ten, and then be like, "Well, we're not going to play each other in the conference championship game."
Could you imagine that?
Can you imagine the arguments that would go on? And I understand that's not what the championship game's for, but it kind of is at the same time. Like, figure out a champion, right?
I think Michigan and Ohio State's the perfect example because you could have a situation where both Michigan and Ohio State are undefeated and play each other that last week like they have for years, and then turn around and play in the Big Ten championship game against one another. And that's when it gets good because college football's biggest rivalry is in playing against each other in the conference championship. And then they just played the week before, in a close game. So that is what's awesome. But like you said, if you just Michigan and Ohio State. Yeah, they both have one conference loss. They're just going to tie. Whatever. Doesn't matter. No, awful.
Right. So we need to find a way to preserve these conference championship games and make it worth playing in because they're fun. Like, and I hope you get to experience this soon-ish with Oklahoma and the SEC, and I know you did with the Big 12.
Yeah.
But like I said, like, nothing could beat going to the big house, I'm sure, And I hope we get to go, like we talked about, when Oklahoma plays Michigan this year. I hope you get to experience it. I wish we could have experienced Oklahoma last year, but nothing really beats going to the home field. I get that. But I'm telling you what, outside of obviously going to a national championship game, I wasn't there, but like that Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis for me when I went to the Michigan-Iowa game was unbelievable. Like, it was so much fun. And I caution this a little bit because Michigan won the game.
Right.
Had Michigan lost, I don't know if I would have been like, yeah, this is so much fun.
This was awesome.
But just the whole atmosphere that was there, the whole pageantry of winning the Big Ten, you know, Iowa talking crap to Michigan, the two teams there, seeing the field, all this stuff, like, it was a blast. Like, I just don't think I would have felt the same way about a 3-4 game in the Big Ten, you know, type of situation. Like,
no,
absolutely like
not.
It just, I know this shouldn't be about the fans completely, but like at the same time, like Michigan celebrated that like they won a national championship, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but would you be excited if Michigan was in there as a 3-4 or 3 or 4?
No. I mean, I would watch the game. Obviously, I watch all the Michigan games. I watched, you know, they could go play in the Pop-Tart Bowl, like you said, Notre Dame. But and I would watch the game, but there's not that excitement as much. And it would be nerve-wracking because if I knew it was a playing game, it'd be all that stuff. I get it. And it'd be fun, but it's not the same. It is not the same. So I guess out of all this talk, and we've been rambling on for 20-plus minutes just about this, we need to find a way to preserve these conference championship games. Like, you're telling me, you know, and I'm not even Michigan, you know, the Ohio State, Indiana game, the Oregon Penn State game, when Michigan was playing Iowa, you know, Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, whoever it might be, Texas, Georgia, Texas, Alabama. You're telling me you don't want those games again?
Yeah. Now, the Texas-Georgia game a couple years ago was a great game. But, I mean, these are two good, really, really good football teams playing against one another. Who doesn't want to see that? That's good football.
Yeah. Let's keep it. Find a way. NCAA, if you're listening, they're not.
Because
if somebody's got a connection to the NCAA, we'll take their call. We're available.
Yep.
It's always those, you know, and I'm not saying I have the right decision. I'm not saying you do, but I think we have some good ideas here. But I don't think the NCAA wants to listen to us or the college football playoffs.
Well, no, this AFCA or whoever, you know, they proposed get rid of the conference championship games because they're trying to free up another week for postseason play. Conference championship games, they need to stay. They must stay. It's important for them to stay. You know, the postseason, leave it at 12. Don't need to expand it right now. Give it a couple of more years at least, for crying out loud.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So
that's our rant, I guess.
That's our rant. Yeah.
That's all right.
Listen, like I said, you know, the NCAA hasn't called me or you about this. They haven't called me about uniforms from the NFL either. So
they need to, though.
We're still here. You don't have to pay me much. I'll do it.
Right.
Listen, it's all good stuff to talk about here in the offseason, and hopefully they find that happy medium of ways to keep this and stuff like that. So, good conversation. I enjoyed it. The NFL, we'll get into it more, but we had this college conversation we wanted to have. So the NFL is sometime. They haven't released the exact date, but the schedule should be coming out here in the next week or two. When they do that, we will have a ton to talk about. And don't get me wrong, we'll still have more to talk about with college sports. But, hey, we're under 100 days to some real-ish football. It sounds like a lot, but you know what? I think it'll be here before we know it. And you know what? While you're waiting on that, check out our partnership with Happy Nuts. Get some stuff from Happy Nuts. Tony, give them the code real quick before we leave.
2 Bald Guys 20. Get you 20% off at Happy Nuts. 2 Bald Guys 20 for 20% off. It's worth it.
All right, go there, get your stuff. Come back next week, listen to us. We're having a blast talking football, even though there's not any real games going on. But we'll come back next week with more to talk about. Until then, I am Adam.
I'm Tony. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to the 2 Bald Guys Sports Podcast with Adam and Tony. Don't forget to check out our partnership with Happy Nuts.